I don't like the idea of, a security program owning all of the risks. The security organization that says no and then asks questions later is one that isn't going to survive very long in successful companies. We want to enable the business to do the things it needs to do, and again, help articulate the risks associated with doing that, and then help find the ways to mitigate those risks. We are here to enable the business to be successful and do it in the most secure way possible, not to come in and add friction, add blockers, or to say no because we feel like we know the security implication better. So less control and more understanding of what the business is trying to accomplish.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for listening to another episode of Future of Data Security. Today, I'm speaking with Taylor Lobb, Chief Security Officer at Podium. Taylor, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I was looking at your LinkedIn, and you've run security at very different companies. You were working in financial data at Clearwater, construction tech at Built, and now Podium, serving a wide variety of local businesses. I'm curious what pulled you into security in the first place, and when you wake up in the morning, what gets you out of bed? What keeps you in it nowadays?
Yeah, that's a great question. Originally, honestly, the pull to security was a need, right? I started my career in IT, and as being part of a small company, the security function organically fell to IT. And as I started looking more into the discrete functions that were part of a security program, I just became more and more interested, especially on the red teaming side. That's kind of what got me really interested. And then as I continued to grow my skills and expertise in security and expand, I just found that I had a real strong passion and love for the discipline. And here I am for the past, over a decade, been focused solely on security.
So you've held that top security seat at multiple companies now. How do you describe what the CISO is actually accountable for in today's landscape?
The approach that I take, or at least my perspective on the responsibility for the security program and the CISO or the CSO, is really we are partnership when it comes to risk management, helping identify and understand the risks associated with operating the business. I don't like the idea of a security program owning all of the risks. It's more we own the identification and then assistance with remediation planning on how we can mitigate the risks that we identify. So it's really just approaching all of the operations that that are part of the business from a risk focused or security focused lens, and partnering with those operations owners to help understand what could possibly go wrong if we don't anticipate risks or don't address them.
And when it comes to protecting sensitive data, again, you've worked across multiple environments. What stays constant about data security, and what changes from one sector, one vertical to the next?
What stays constant is the perceived need to access more data than was actually needed to do one's job. I know we all familiar with the principle of least privilege, and you only get access to the information that you need or the data that you need, which I firmly believe is true, and we should do that. It's very hard for people to articulate the minimum amount of data access that they need to do their job, and so helping from a security perspective, understanding the role and what is actually needed, and then partnering with them to make sure that they know that they are going to continue to maintain the access that they need, and we're not restricting them just because we can. We just want to make sure that we're not broadening that access. I found that to be pretty universal, regardless of the size of company or the type of company, that people just feel like they want and need more access than maybe what is necessary. And so helping them understand what that is really a good step in partnering to make sure we're not just removing access just because we want to.
And now with the shift to agentic AI, of course, everyone wants their cloud to have access to all the business data. I think when we saw, maybe 3 years ago, generative AI was really mostly about what data goes into a model, is it outside the business, and so forth. Now with agentic AI, it's really a bit different because systems can take action, programmed action, autonomous action. From where you sit, what's the new risk that didn't exist a year ago, and how are you thinking about navigating that risk?
I think that you kind of touched on that. And for me, the way that I think about risks when it comes to agents is it's more user versus identity. And what I mean by that is historically when we've said identity, that's associated with a person, right? Like an actual person. And now identity doesn't necessarily mean it is a person, right? It could be an AI agent. It could be any number of things that operate inside of an enterprise that need access to data or systems. We obviously have the human ones like employees and contractors, but then you have service accounts, APIs, AI agents, CI/CD pipelines, GitHub Actions, all those things that are performing actions on behalf of the business. And so we need to take a bit of a different approach when it comes to how we think about that access, as opposed to just the identity belongs to a user, right? So I think we are a little behind the curve in applying this identity model to AI agents. We think of them as users, and they really aren't. But that's probably the best way that we can handle it at this point, because they're certainly not service accounts, right? They need access to a lot of things. But would the things that I have access to always be appropriate for my AI agents to have access to those things, right? And so how do we think about that? And really, it's just the distinguishing between users and identity that I think is the big risk. I think we're trying to apply more of a user identity model to a model that needs to evolve with the use of AI agents.
Yeah, it's a very interesting space. I was reading this week, that Claude, and as an example, introduced the Claude tag agent identity. And so if you use Claude in Slack as an example, it would have its own tokens, its own grants, its own kind of service account. But you're right, up to this point, I think by and large agents have been using the identity of the user, and often the user has broad access that was unknown before, but people weren't spending all day perusing around, hey, what do I have access to? But now at the drop of a hat, you could say, hey, I'd like to know where the bodies are buried. And the agent just says, all right away. That's a very interesting change to navigate. I'm curious to see how we're going to change the existing foundation of identity access management to incorporate these new agents. Do you have any thoughts on that? How you predict that's going to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that the evolution will be that the data becomes identity aware, right? Right now, it's, Taylor can read a document. So tomorrow, it's Taylor can read a document, but my AI assistant can only summarize it, right? It can't export it. It can't train on it. It can't share it externally. It can't send to another model, those types of things, but it's the same document, right? So I think that the underlying data needs to become a little bit more identity aware, because it's the same document but different identities. And I think we give broader permissions to humans kind of inherently, right? Admin access versus more scoped access with service accounts. I think if we take a more fine-grained granular approach to the AI identity, then we can have better control over the data, but still give the access that it needs to do the job, right? For me, granting read access to my AI agent to that document, it can do all the things that I can do with it, but perhaps only I just want to summarize it, right? So I think we can get a little bit more granular there. And honestly, I think that's probably going to be on the data side, on the data systems.
I was talking to another CIO a few weeks ago, and they were in the wealth management space, and some clients got like a report, that said Claude says in there. And so they said, what the hell? This was generated with AI, with my financial data. And they did an investigation and found that basically about 80 financial advisors were all using Cloud Cowork to now do all the recommendations in the files because it was so powerful. And it was a blatant example of shadow AI. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what are you seeing with shadow AI? And how do we combat this alongside a team that wants to really, by Darwin, use the best tools and be as fast as they can to get the job done? What are some of the approaches?
Shadow AI, IT has been an age-old problem, as we're all aware. I don't know that it's going away per se, just immediately. I do think that one of the key ways to fight against that, especially when it comes to AI usage, is visibility. we have to know what is happening, where that data is going, what data it is, discovering the AI usage, and enabling safe adoption. Because people are going to use these tools because of how powerful they are. And honestly, the companies that are going to be successful are the ones that adopt them and in a secure way. So, I think rushing into blocking then because we aren't aware isn't the right model. I think that's kind of backwards. I think we need to understand where it's being used, what data is flowing into it, and what value it creates. Then we decide whether to allow it, or approve it, or restrict it, that kind of thing. And the only way we can have that model is if we have visibility. So we need to see what is happening, and then we can go and determine whether or not those things are true, and then we can move forward with adopting it with the right guardrails and safety in place.
I think right now so many people are touching the data. You have the chief security officer, you have the CIO, you have the chief privacy officer. Many stakeholders, the chief data officer, are all involved in the data. Of course, there are great benefits to that to advance the business. Where do you see the risk actually sitting? Is it going to sit more so in one area? Is it going to be a shared function as we really drive ourselves into this multiplayer AI first era?
Yeah, no, I think it's not a single person who's responsible for the security of the data because the nature of how we use it and the implications around it, right? You talked about a, a number of different stakeholders who really have a different responsibility to protect and use that data. You have the people who use the data. Obviously, they need to be good stewards of the data. You have the legal team who needs to help understand the regulatory requirements associated with that data use, where it can go. Then you have the security side to make sure that access is appropriate and people aren't leaking that data in other ways. So I think it's going to be a shared responsibility model because it's not just used and owned by a single group within the company.
From your perspective, obviously there are new tools, whether it's cybersecurity tools, data security tools. They're all using AI. They all overnight flick the switch, and now there's an agentic AI layer on top. I'm curious, based on your own experience, where you've seen, okay, there's some application, there's some features that are really amazing. They're delivering the next level of efficiency when it comes to security. Then there's others that are falling short. It's really, it's really fake. It's not driving the results that are claimed. Can you share some different types of tools and scenarios that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name any specifics, but I've seen a couple of examples where AI for the past year has been a buzzword. It's been something that everybody is bolting onto a product or building it as an AI native or first type of product. And honestly, the ones that adopt AI functionality best are the ones who take that kind of building it with that focus from the beginning. The ones that I've seen that are kind of more lip service, or you have more legacy tools that have bolted on some LLM to their product and call it AI assisted or enabled, and it's really not great. It's at least the first iterations. I'm sure they've evolved and they continue to get better. The ones that I've seen that are actually have leveraged AI that add value are the ones that's their value proposition. They utilize that as their selling point. And I've seen a couple of examples that have done that really well and frankly, have better results. The complaints I've heard from people are the ones who, again, are using those legacy tools that have an AI functionality, and they just say the AI functionality is just effectively noise at this point. They need to get better. So
A lot of organizations now feel emboldened, especially if they have a big engineering group. They might be already building products they're selling to the market to now repatriate some developments to replace technologies they were buying as a SaaS. Have you seen that? Have you been involved in that? Do you feel there's a motion to say, okay, this is something we were buying off the shelf, but you know what? We can probably rebuild it in house better, more tailored to our use case. What are you seeing on that front?
I've certainly seen that to be true, where the build versus buy equation has somewhat inverted in the companies that have fully embraced and adopted AI usage, especially in the technology side, on the engineering side of the house. I wouldn't say it's trivial, but it's much easier to build tools or applications for internal operations that are more specific and frankly more efficient and effective to your individual use cases, right? Because you don't have to solve for hundreds or thousands of clients that may be multi-tenant, and you build the features that you want and you can build them at an accelerated pace. You don't have to do all of the testing and concerns about, you know, cross-tenant data exposure, things like that, that, you know, larger enterprise SaaS companies need to focus on. So when it comes to building in-house, we can be much more flexible, much more efficient, much quicker, and frankly, build a lot of the same feature set that you could get in the market that was previously a lot harder to do. So I think that that equation or that question has kind of shifted pretty drastically in the past year of people are looking to build before buying at this point.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think a lot of people are worried every time there's a new press release from Cloud or OpenAI in security. What product is being launched can destroy a whole industry in one night. You sit on the buying side, obviously. There's complications now. There might be a propensity to build. What's your honest advice to vendors nowadays trying to sell, especially data security product to a CSO in that context?
For me, the tools that are going to stick are the ones that solve uh, problems that require a lot of ongoing maintenance and contributions to data. So the couple that I've thought through, for instance, like you could build a tool, an internal tool that hooks onto all of the processes on endpoints and then effectively run your own anti-malware system. The thing that is really hard to do that, you know, people shouldn't want to sign up for readily is maintaining the signatures and the malware analysis and the libraries of all these things. Like, yes, we could block processes pretty easily with a system that you build, but it's that other part that's hard to solve. So you have some of these, you know, larger vendors that they have that, they've solved that problem, and that's going to continue to be valuable. And that's where they should lean in is on those things. The functionality of the tooling, I think it's a little bit more of a commodity now. We can build the functionality. It's the underlying data and enrichment that we need that is harder to come by, that companies need to lean into.
A lot of people think that the traditional UI is going to die, that things are going to go headless, where you're buying a product, right? It's more about the coverage, the quality of the coverage. You're getting real-time information, signatures, and then ultimately you're going to consume this data model that you've purchased that's being kept up to date, and you're going to be able to present that in any format of the day that is relevant for you, whether it's CSV, a PDF, you want it in an HTML. What's your thoughts on that in this headless prediction?
I think that's pretty indicative of the way it's going, honestly. I think that, again, going back to what I mentioned before, I think the value that these vendors can provide is that type of data that they have that is harder for individual companies to curate or to even find or to have. So exposing that in ways that the company wants to use that, I think is the next step. And whether it's MCP connections or, you know, AI connections or other exports, I mean, I honestly think that the companies that are building these tools are going to want to see that data integrated into the tools that they build in house, and they will likely pay a similar price than, you know, what they'd pay now for a full-fledged UI, because the UI is somewhat trivial to build internally. They just need that data. So exposing MCP server to connect to my internal tools that I built, that's pretty compelling, because then I don't have to go solve the data problem and collect all that.
Yeah, it's so funny. I have many people in my team now. They sent me an email with an HTML file, and they say, hey, load that HTML. That'll show you the new org chart. That'll show you something, right? And it gives people an ability to kind of get to exactly what they want in the visual they want at a very low cost. And I always laugh, and I get a few of these emails, and then I download the HTML. I drop it again in the browser to see. Have you been seeing that also on your site?
I've seen some form of that. I mean, like, the thing that I noticed quite a bit is my current company, Podium. We've fully embraced AI and have done a lot of really novel and interesting things, not only to use it, but also on the security side of it. So a lot of what I see is, hey, I want your tool that you built to be able to talk to the tool that I built. So expose an MCP so I can get that pulled into my views, right? So we're not necessarily building tools that are consumed by every user. You're building your own to help your workflows, and then you want data from other people. So you want the systems to talk to each other. So, and you want it done in an automated way. So it's less sending data around manually and more of, hey, you have that data. I want to consume it into the thing that I built. So expose that for me and, go that route.
Without breaking any secrets, are there some use cases or novel things you've seen unlock with AI that you're currently working on you could share for the audience?
Sure. I think, well, a couple of the observations that I've seen with, especially when it comes to the security side is, you have to match agentic AI usage with a corresponding security agentic AI usage. And the more scoped those agents are to the function that they are trying to perform, the better they are at doing it. You don't just want to bolt on more instructions to whatever AI agent doing, right? If you have a coding agent, you don't want to, also say, also make sure security is considered, and you can give it whatever prompt or instructions you want. What's better is to have a scoped agent that is focused specifically on the security side, whether it's a review or code scanning or whatnot. Don't leave it up to the agent that's doing the job. You have a mirrored agent that is responsible just for the security part of it. So deploying that at scale makes the most sense and has been the most effective, and it gives you the most confidence that the gate is your security agent, not some security instruction within the agent that you hope it's going to honor when maybe it won't because it's trying to build a feature and it's what wins out, right? So um, that's observation I've seen. The more scoped it is to a specific job, the better it is at doing that job. And you can spin up as many agents as you need to do whatever jobs there are. It's just figuring out those guardrails that you need.
So, in other words, separation of concern where one agent could be doing a work product and other agents would systematically validate to say, hey, is there prompt injection or is there something security related happening? And then vetting the first agent's work before it carries on in the value chain.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you can have a human in the loop of whatever part of that chain your organization's comfortable with, but you can even have it so agents are communicating with one another, right? As part of a build pipeline, the security agent discovers something in a security review that needs to be fixed. So instead of just failing the build, it dumps it back to the agent that either coded it or submitted the build. And then they talk back and forth until it's resolved. And, again, there's different gates or checks that you can put in place to have a human check in if we feel like we need to. But the more and more we use it, the more comfortable we get with its usage and the more confident we get with its accuracy, the more this can be automated. And we know that, as code generation increases by 5, 10x or more, you can't have people reviewing it all. You can't have security reviews for all of it. So it's really, you know, it's turned out to be a model that I think will work very, very well as it gets more and more tried and more burned in.
From a leadership perspective, you've worked with different organizations. When you're looking to bring together a team, what are some of the cultural elements? What are some of the individual attributes you're looking for putting together your senior security team?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I like to make sure that people understand the primary philosophy when it comes to the security organizations that I try to build, and that's enablement and partnership function, right? I think that an approach of a security organization that says no and then asks questions later is one that isn't going to survive very long in successful companies. I think that we want to enable the business to do the things it needs to do, and again, help articulate the risks associated with doing that, and then help find the ways to mitigate those risks. So when looking for the leadership team or even the other parts of the team that I like to build is I want them to understand we are here to enable the business to be successful and do it in the most secure way possible, not to come in and add friction, add blockers, or to say no because we feel like we know the security implication better. So we have the ability to say no. We definitely want to be an enabler function.
For a younger Taylor or somebody new starting in the space, what are a few golden nuggets, things you could share, that you would do differently or key advice for younger people?
For me, a lesson learned that was a harder one that I would probably not repeat is I would opt for less control as I started to take on more and more responsibility on the security side. I don't want to control all of the risk, or I think it becomes more of a blocker and friction, and then it's harder for security to get anything done in the company when every time you're asked about something, you say that's not the secure way to do it, so we can't do it that way. So less control and more understanding of what the business is trying to accomplish, I think is really where I would have liked to learn that lesson earlier in my career. I think for someone starting out in security or otherwise, or in security leadership, is to, you have to be curious. I think we all understand that's definitely true. But I think instead of focusing as much on the technology piece, understand what the business is trying to accomplish and the risks associated with doing those things. And it really goes a long way for helping establishing a program that frankly can be successful.
All right, Taylor, that's all the time we have for today. But before we wrap up, if people want to follow your work, your thinking, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, they can follow me on LinkedIn. So you can look me up there. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, thank you. Very sharp conversation. I enjoyed it. Thanks for being on the program.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.